Trump's power is crumbling in real time, and nobody in his circle is saying it out loud. Congress just killed his unlawful orders. Judges are openly calling out his excuses, and even Republican leaders are warning that Trump's plan to use the nuclear option could blow up the entire government. While Trump rages online, real Americans are running out of food assistance. Air traffic controllers are working without pay, and families are begging strangers for help just to feed their kids. This is not strength. This is collapse, desperation, and chaos. And the moment Trump realizes he's losing control, that's where everything breaks.
This morning, President Trump is calling on Republicans to change the rules in the Senate to reopen the government. Trump posting overnight, it is now time for the Republicans to play their Trump card and go for what is called the nuclear option. Get rid of the filibuster and get rid of it now. The move would allow Republicans to pass a bill to fund the government with a simple majority instead of the 60 votes currently needed. But Senate Majority Leader John Thune has warned against this move, saying it could come back to bite Republicans whenever Democrats take power back. Meanwhile, millions of Americans fear their food assistance or SNAP benefits will run out tomorrow as the government shutdown drags on.
This is what it looks like when a leader tries to bulldoze the rules, and the system stares back and says no. Tonight the story is simple. Power tested, institutions answered, and real people were on the line. Here's the picture. Facing a shutdown crisis that he helped create, Donald Trump demanded the nuclear option. Kill the Senate filibuster, so a bare majority could steamroll policy and reopen government on his terms. That wasn't a policy argument. That was a raw power play aimed at rewriting the rules of American democracy in the middle of a standoff that was already hurting families, travelers, and federal workers. But the Senate isn't a reality show. It's an institution designed to slow down power rushes, even from a president who loves the fast-forward button. Republican leaders, no liberals mind you, warned that detonating a centuries-old guardrail would explode in everyone's face the next time power shifts. And while that power struggle played out, the courts were doing what courts are supposed to do, applying the law to protect people. In Boston, U.S. District Judge Indira Talwani pressed the administration on why emergency funds weren't being used to keep food assistance flowing. She wasn't buying the excuses. She wanted action, not spin, because the stakes weren't abstract. They were dinner tables, grocery lines, kids' lunch boxes.
I've gone to social media to ask for help from everyone that I could possibly think of.
It now appears a federal judge hearing a lawsuit over emergency funding may step in. Judge Indira Talwani saying right now Congress has put money in an emergency fund for an emergency, and it's hard for me to understand how this isn't an emergency. Republicans argue it's not that easy.
If they transfer funds from these other sources, it pulls it away immediately from school meals and infant formula.
The judge dismissing the administration's explanation, saying, I want agency action, not lawyering. We're not going to make everyone drop dead. The judge could compel the administration to release the funds.
Let's slow down and make this crystal clear. Trump wanted to change Senate rules mid-crisis, marginalize the minority, and muscle through a one-party fix. Republicans in Congress said, we're not burning the Constitution to solve your problem. Judges said, the law already gives you tools to prevent hunger. Use them. That's checks and balances doing exactly what the founders intended. And there's a human story underneath all of this. Millions of Americans, yes, millions, were staring at the possibility of SNAP benefits running dry. This isn't a line on a spreadsheet. It's whether families can get formula, whether seniors can stock their pantries, whether working parents can make it through the week. While that was unfolding, the shutdown's shockwaves hit the nation's airports. The FAA warned of controller shortages so severe that Orlando, one of the busiest airports in the country, could face a period with no certified controllers to land planes. That's not politics. That's safety. And it's what happens when you push a system past the breaking point and tell workers to keep showing up without pay. Back on Capitol Hill, Democrats said, reopen government and extend healthcare subsidies to keep premiums from spiking. Republicans said, no, do it our way. Trump posted that Obamacare is a disaster, as if rhetoric could replace math on family budgets. Here's the through line. When cornered, Trump reaches for force. Break the rules, bend the truth, attack the referees. But democratic power is not about forcing your will. It's about gathering consent, following the law, and protecting the vulnerable. The Senate said rules matter. The courts said people matter. That's the difference between democracy and a personality cult.
But whether the Trump administration will comply remains to be seen. And even if it does, the emergency funding available would still fall short of the monthly SNAP payouts. Back on Capitol Hill, Democrats digging in, refusing to open the government until Republicans agreed to extend Obamacare subsidies to prevent health care insurance premiums from skyrocketing next year. A Utah woman we spoke to says even with the subsidies, her premium next year will rise from $495 to $753. And without the subsidies, it will more than quadrupled to more than $2,100.
We can't afford.
Look at the workforce bearing the brunt. Air traffic controllers, sworn to keep millions safe, were working without pay. Many called out. Delays mounted. Travel plans collapsed. It wasn't because they're lazy. It was because leadership failed them. You cannot run a country on threats and theatrics. And then the most basic question. Will people eat? Judges in multiple jurisdictions started drawing a line. Use the contingency funds. Keep the benefits flowing. Don't weaponize bureaucracy against the poor. If there isn't enough to fully cover a month, at least stop the bleeding while Congress hammers out a deal. Now let's talk about the hypocrisy. For years we've heard that the filibuster is sacred, until a strong man wants it gone for short-term gain. We've heard that budgets must be responsible, until brinkmanship threatens to jack up premiums and delay paychecks for the very workers who make this country run. We've heard that law and order are paramount, until a judge orders the administration to follow the law, and suddenly the court is political. The pattern is relentless. When the rules help Trump, they're essential. When they restrain him, they must be destroyed. And we can trace the cost. Food banks bracing for surges, families refreshing EBT balances, praying that a judge's order comes in time. Travelers stuck for hours because the safety net for air traffic control has frayed under a shutdown. None of that is necessary. It's manufactured crisis, punching down on the vulnerable and betting that chaos will force concessions. But the bet failed because checks and balances still work when people stand up. Congress refused to torch the filibuster on command. Courts told the executive branch to use the lawful tools it already has to keep people fed. Civil society sounded the alarm, and the press put the facts on screen. That is how democratic institutions apply pressure back on raw, unaccountable power.
To double what it costs for us to live just to have health insurance.
Republicans argued the Affordable Care Act, which set up Obamacare, was a bad law that drives up premiums and strains doctors. President Trump last night posting, quote, Obamacare is a disaster. Rates are going through the roof for really bad health care. Do something, Democrats. Stacey Cox says right now a flawed plan is better than no plan. Meanwhile, as more government workers go without paychecks, more of them are turning to food banks.
Honestly, this has been devastating.
Wayne Barber says he's been an air traffic controller for 23 years.
I'm still going to show up to work because that's what I swore an oath to do.
But many air traffic controllers no longer getting paid are calling out sick, causing staff shortages and delays at major airports. At Orlando's airport yesterday, a warning that at one point there would be no certified air traffic controllers to land planes, forcing a ground delay.
A shortage of air traffic controllers was already a big problem before the government shutdown. Now authorities warn if the shutdown drags on, especially through the Thanksgiving travel period, it'll be a disaster.
There's a lesson here for anyone who thinks democracy is just about who shouts the loudest. It's not. It's about standards you uphold even when it's inconvenient, even when your team could get a short-term win by torching them. It's why John Thune's warning mattered. Not because I agree with his politics, but because he understood that the tool you use today can be turned on you tomorrow. Guardrails are there to protect everyone, and it's why Judge Talwani's words, agency action, not lawyering, landed with such force. Because at the end of every legal memo is a family at a kitchen table. At the end of every shutdown talking point is a TSA agent, an air traffic controller, a SNAP recipient who can't wait for a cable news segment to end before they feed their kids. The law is supposed to bridge that gap between power and people. So yes, Trump asked for the nuclear option. He wanted to yank out a core pillar of the Senate to get his way in a crisis. But the institutions pushed back. Not perfectly, not instantly, but decisively enough to keep the lights on for millions. That's the story tonight. The system held because people inside it chose principle over expedience. And that leaves us with a choice. Do we normalize government by tantrum, rule by threat, and policy by post? Or do we return to the slow, frustrating work of coalition and compromise that actually keeps a country together? One path starves families and grounds planes. The other keeps faith with a constitution that survived worse than this. In moments like these, patriotism is not a slogan. It's discipline. It's refusing to rig the rules for a win. It's listening when a judge says, do your job, and when a lawmaker says, the blowtorch you're asking for will burn us all. That's how democratic power should work, bounded by law, aimed at the common good, and accountable to the people who feel its weight first and hardest. We end where we began. Power was tested, and the system said no. It didn't fix everything. It didn't save everyone from hardship. But it reminded us that in America, the rules don't bend to one man's will. They bend toward the people when we force them to.